Welcome to this public witness hearing specifically for American Indian Alaska Native programs under the jurisdiction of the Interior Environmental Appropriations Subcommittee. I especially want to welcome the distinguished tribal elders and leaders testifying today and in the audience. Most of you have traveled a long way to be here this week. I hope you'll seize the opportunity to meet with other members of Congress outside the subcommittee to remind them that honoring the nation's trust obligations is a responsibility. Oops. Oh, well, that's okay. Shared by all members of Congress, regardless of our state or congressional district. I can assure you that your voices are heard by the subcommittee. For those new to the process, today's hearings are just the start of a dialogue we've come to depend upon to help us make smart choices in the budget and to earn the votes of our colleagues. American Indian and Alaska Native programs will continue to be a nonpartisan priority for this subcommittee, just as they've been in recent years and under the chairmanships of both Democrats and Republicans alike. Before we begin, I have a bit of housekeeping to share. Committee rules prohibit the use of outside cameras and audio equipment during the hearings. The hearings can be viewed in its entirety on the committee's website, and an official hearing transcript will be available at gpo.gov. I will call each panel of witnesses to the table one panel at a time. Each witness will have 5 minutes to present testimony. Your full written testimony will be included in the record, so please don't feel pressured to cover every item in 5 minutes. Finishing in less than 5 minutes would be appreciated if you can. We'll be using a timer to track the progress of each witness. When the light turns yellow, the witness will have 1 minute remaining to conclude his or her remarks. When the light blinks red, that's when I'll ask the witness to stop. You'll hear from every witness on each panel before members will be provided an opportunity to ask questions. Because we do have another full day ahead, I request that we try to keep things moving in order to stay on schedule and respect each other's time. I'm sure many of you have planes to catch. With that, I thank you again for being here today, and I'm happy to yield now to our distinguished ranking member, Betty McCollum, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I know it is. The microphone's working. I took care of my housekeeping, Mr. Chair. And
Good job.
I want to thank all the people who have come to testify today, and I'm ready to listen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Well, I want to thank our first panel. And I'm going to recognize William Bill Harris, Chief of the, I always pronounce this wrong, Catawba? Okay, Catawba, okay, Indian Nation. You're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you for coming.
Okay, mic is on. So, on behalf of the Catawba Nation. Oh. Ooh. Testing 1, 2. Okay, we got it. On behalf of the Catawba Nation, thank you for this opportunity to testify before this subcommittee. My name is William Harris. I am the Chief of the Catawba Nation. This committee has heard me testify before and has been very supportive of the Catawbas. I have had the opportunity to talk to you about our tribe's long and close relationship with the United States. We stood side by side with the American patriots during the Revolution and have fought on behalf of the United States in every conflict since. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the importance of funding economic development for tribes that do not have substantial revenue from resources like gaming. Technically, the Catawba tribe, is currently allowed one form of gaming, which is bingo, played according to traditional rules and not on machines. Unfortunately, we just announced last week that we had to shut down our bingo hall. Over the last few years, the bingo operation grossed about $14 million. However, since we're the only tribe in the country that is required to pay a tax to the state, straight off the top, the state gets 10% of the gross. So the state got $1.4 million, and we had to comply with other restrictions involving payouts. So in the end, there was no net revenue. This means that the tribe made nothing, but we lost money, and the South Carolina made $1.4 million. Similarly, we're the only tribe in the country that is required to pay to send our children, to local public school. In our case, at the Nassau County rate. Our local school district, which has done a good job educating our children, has taken the position that with interest, we owe $4.5 million on that debt, which far exceeds our total assets. So we want to achieve economic self-sufficiency, but we have been financially crushed by the unexpected restrictions placed in our Settlement Act at the insistence of the state of South Carolina. We have to find another path. Many tribes are economic engines in such areas as tourism, energy, small business development, and commercial services, among many others. However, limited access to capital and investment financing remain substantial barriers to economic development in Indian country. We struggle with uniquely burdensome federal restrictions and regulations, poor infrastructure, and other challenges that limit our economy from flourishing. It is important to create avenues for investment funds, financial resources, and business models that are mutually advantageous to tribes and potential partners for economic advancement, stability, and diversification. We encourage this subcommittee to provide increased support for investment opportunities in Indian country. Such funding could flow through the Office of Indian Energy and Economic Development at the BIA. As an artist and traditional potter, I am intimately familiar with the press of cool clay beneath my fingers and the process of creating a new form from the South Carolina earth. Such vessels transmit not only the impressions of the artists who created them, but also the cultural heritage and worldviews of all those individuals who came before. When these items are removed from Native communities through illegal trafficking, theft, or disruptions in the transmission of traditional practices, an irreplaceable aspect of our cultural expression and identity is lost as well. We would like to take this opportunity to provide a heartfelt thanks for you providing expanded funding for NACPA-related law enforcement activities in the 2017 omnibus. With a secure and dedicated funding stream, BIA and tribal officials will have an enhanced capacity to combat and to deter trafficking of tribal cultural patrimony. When aligned with the federal protections of the Protect Patrimony Resolution passed by the Congress last year, the Catawba Indian Nation can see a positive path forward in ensuring that the next generation will have access to these important cultural resources. We strongly encourage you to continue to support programs that protect our cultural heritage, including law enforcement funding and funding for the tribal historic preservation offices. I thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about the needs of the Catawba Nation.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, Kurt Francis, President of the United South and Eastern Tribes Sovereignty Protection Fund. You're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Calvert. Thank you, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, Representative Pingree, and members of the subcommittee. Again, appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you this morning. As elected officials, you know all too well the great responsibility that comes with serving the interests of the citizens who elect us to office. We share in common the desire to make a positive difference in our communities and within the lives of our fellow citizens. As Chief of the Penobscot Indian Nation and President of the United South and Eastern Tribes Sovereignty Protection Fund, I come before you today with a great sense of urgency and anticipation. The Penobscot Indian Nation, the 26 federally recognized nations of USET, and tribal nations across the country continue to evolve, grow, and mature as sovereign governments, just like any other sovereign government, including the United States. Due to the perseverance of us as a people, and through the blessings of our Creator, we are still here today. I know that you are all intimately familiar with our unique and special relationship. However, many in Congress do not have this same level of familiarity and understanding, which is the reason for the existence of organizations such as ours. You know, as Congressman Cole has stated in the past, when you, the members of Congress, swear allegiance to the Constitution, you are swearing an allegiance to Indian sovereignty, whether you know it or not. Ours is a story and relationship between two sovereign government entities that has not been without its fair share of challenges. It is a relationship that includes the exchange, sometimes voluntary, but most often involuntary, of our land and natural resources for promises of our protection and overall well-being. These promises have no expiration date and have been further validated and confirmed by the Constitution, treaties, and numerous laws and court decisions. These lands and natural resources that the United States acquired from Indian country are at its very foundation and directly attributable to this country becoming the most powerful and influential nation in the world. However, despite these facts, I once again come before you asking the United States to honor its commitments, to honor its sacred promises. I sit here, tribal nations across this country, the first peoples of this land, continue to experience some of the greatest disparities in health and overall wellness and well-being. As you move forward with this budgetary process, fulfillment of the trust obligations should not be viewed and executed as a yearly discretionary decision as it currently is rendered. This is not a question about addressing poverty and needs across Indian country. Our relationship is much more than this. This is ultimately a question about honor, about fulfilling commitments and promises. A nation's exceptionalism is grounded in these principles. As leaders who have consistently demonstrated a true understanding of this commitment and obligation, I implore you to lead the change within Congress that is necessary to improve how the United States views, honors, and fulfills its promises to Indian country. The federal government is a reflection, the federal budget, is a reflection of that commitment. I recognize that there are many causes and issues that this body considers. However, I ask you always remember the nation's first promise to its first people. Regarding our specific priorities for FY 2018, it appears the Indian Health Service and the Bureau of Indian Affairs are largely protected under President Trump's budget blueprint. However, we have deep concerns with proposed cuts and eliminations of other programs and agencies critical to meeting that trust responsibility. We urge this subcommittee, as some of Indian country's greatest congressional allies, to ensure the trust responsibility is upheld during the FY 2018 budget and appropriations process. We are also concerned that the across-the-board sequestration of all federal agencies and programs will return as a real possibility for FY 2018. This violation of the federal trust responsibility must never happen again, and we urge this subcommittee to ensure the permanent exemption of all federal Indian programs from any sequestration. The USET is troubled by the President's signing statement for the FY 2017 omnibus, suggesting that the Native American Housing Block Grant is race-based and therefore unconstitutional. As this subcommittee knows, all federal Indian programs are based on a political government-to-government relationship between the United States and tribal nations. USET SPF seeks the assistance of this subcommittee in educating the White House on this sacred relationship. We join tribal nations and organizations across the country advocating for greater increases in the Indian Health Service's chronically underfunded budget. For FY 2018, the work group recommends a 37% increase for a total of $7.1 billion. We totally support this request. Within the Department of Interior, the BIA historically has received lower percentages increases than any other program. The TBIC representatives that advise on the BIA budget have been asked to spread a projected 8% increase across the 125 separate BIA line items, a very impossible task. So finally, USET recognizes that a major priority for the President is the full reorganization and reduction of workforce of the executive branch. However, we also note that executive orders and memoranda issued do not, with only very limited exceptions, exempt positions in the agencies to deliver in this trust responsibility. Again, want to thank you for all your time and attention and patience with my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, Mullen Smith, council member of the, how do you pronounce that? Your Indian Nation? Penobscot Nation. Right. We are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. On behalf of the Penobscot Nation, I want to thank the leadership of this subcommittee for continuing to hold these public witness hearings. I also encourage each of you to visit tribal nations so that you can see how these federal programs are working on the ground. The Penobscot Nation would be happy to host you. Thank you also to Congresswoman Shelley Pingree for being a tireless advocate for tribal nations in Maine. Many of the issues that the Penobscot Nation faces are a result of what we believe to be unintended consequences of the Maine Indian Claims Settlement Act. This federal law was supposed to resolve long-standing land claims by tribal nations in Maine and provide a path forward for productive government-to-government relationships between the tribes and state. Instead, it has resulted in a legal maze whereby we find ourselves in constant litigation with the state, spending vital dollars defending our sovereignty rather than on critical programs. Since passage of the Act in 1980, we have spent 2 decades in litigation defending our rights against attacks by the state. All we want and ask for is to be treated the same as any other federally recognized tribal nation. We have over 123,000 acres of land. This includes about 200 islands covering approximately 80 miles of the Penobscot River. Our Natural Resources Department is the largest department within our government and probably the most important to our hunting and fishing rights. Fall moose and deer hunts and fishing throughout spring and summer provide food for our people throughout the year. We are very concerned about the funding cuts being proposed by President Trump for the EPA. The base funding for our Natural Resources Department comes from the BIA, but we rely on grants from the EPA to supplement our programs. The EPA's Brownfields Program, Air Quality Program, and the Wetland Program allow us to monitor any contamination of our land and air. EPA funding allows us to monitor, sample, and analyze the water quality of the Penobscot River, which is critical to the health of our fish. We haven't harvested a salmon since 1984, but with the help of federal funding last year, more than 1,300 salmon came through the Penobscot River. Any cuts to these vital EPA programs would have a critical impact on our lands, water, and natural resources. Currently, we are in 2 lawsuits with the state. One involves our right to regulate waters within our territory where our people conduct sustenance fishing. The second lawsuit involves the EPA requiring the state's water quality standards meet a minimum level that keep the fish healthy, and happy. While the state acknowledges our right to fish, it does not believe such a right entitles us to eat healthy fish. In both of these lawsuits, the federal government has been on our side. In fact, 2 members of this subcommittee, Ms. McCollum and Mr. Cole, signed on to an amicus brief for one of those cases, and we are very grateful for that support. I raise this matter because my constituents believe that the Maine Indian Claims Settlement Act is becoming a failed federal policy that is degrading the health and well-being of our people. The constant conflict between us and the state jeopardizes our ability to adequately implement federal programs. For example, we receive Indian child welfare funds to help ensure that our children are kept within our community, but we are constantly fighting with the state over which court system has jurisdiction to decide the placement of these children. This conflict results in wasted resources by us and the state. For this reason, we ask that the subcommittee consider including language in its report directing the Interior Department to work with the tribes in Maine to identify ways to address the impact of the Maine Indian Claims Settlement Act. Our biggest health problem is the epidemic of opioid abuse. It is creating alarming levels of death, overdoses, crime, juvenile delinquency, and unemployment. 1 in 4 deaths in Maine now involve heroin or morphine, and 87% of Penobscot child welfare cases involve parental opioid abuse. We are hugely disappointed that we were not invited to the opioid summit attended by Secretary Tom Price last week. Tribes play a critical role in addressing these issues on a statewide level. Our law enforcement and social services personnel work well with their counterparts at the state and local level. It is the politics of the governments that tend to get in the way. We do a great job cobbling together our various federal funding to develop a comprehensive strategy for combating the epidemic we are facing. Within our court system, we have developed a Healing to Wellness program. It involves collaboration between 10 tribal departments that work together to develop a holistic treatment and wellness plan for each participant, and none of the graduates of this program have reoffended in the years following their program completion. And the cost of this program is substantially less than incarcerating people. The base funding for our tribal court system comes from the BIA. Funds specifically for our Healing to Wellness program come from the Department of Justice, but we would not be able to support this program without having a stable tribal court system in place. Thus, any cuts to the BIA's public justice and safety programs would directly impact our ability to help these people. We could do a lot more if we had a drug investigator assigned to the Maine tribes. The BIA employs 3 drug investigators to cover the 26 tribes from Maine to Texas. Given the crisis in Maine, we need a drug investigator designated for our tribal communities. I recognize that as appropriators, you constantly have to make hard decisions with too little money to address all the needs. So let me end by saying Wiliwini, which is thank you in our Wabanaki language. Thank you for supporting programs that allow us to protect our language, our culture, and our sustenance way of life.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next is Camille Ferguson, Executive Director of the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association.
Good morning, Chairman Calvert. Is it a little closer? Okay. Good morning, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and members of the House Interior Appropriation Committee. I actually really appreciate and thank you very much from the bottom of my heart to be able to have this opportunity to speak with you. As you mentioned, I am Camille Ferguson, Executive Director of the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association. I am here to request funds for the implementation of the Native American Improving Visitors Experience Act, the Native Act, as it is referred to, and it became law last fall. I have the honor to lead the nation's only nonprofit solely devoted to developing and sustaining Indian country tourism. Cultural tourism provides sustainable economic development, job creation, infrastructure development in rural and remote communities across the United States. International visitation to Native American community contributes $8.6 billion annually to the U.S. economy, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce. IANTA has contributed to this success by supported by the Bureau of Indian Affairs Transportation Division, and we have been working in the international marketplace since 2007. The good news is the result from our work from 2007 to 2015, international visitation to Indian country has increased a whole 180%. This huge growth is good for the United States as a whole. International visitors to Native American communities spend 12 extra days in the United States. Because they spend those extra days, they spend their extra dollars. And because they spend their extra dollars they're visiting more communities, more cities, using rental cars, taking more domestic flights, they visit national parks, small towns, art galleries, museums, and fine restaurants, and cultural heritage sites, dropping their dollars along the way. Tourism tribes are grateful for each and every one of you who have voted for the Native Act and endorsed the potential for economic development and development for job creation. IANTA is ready to facilitate closer tribal and federal agency collaboration, organized tribal resources, build capacity to attract and satisfy travelers to Indian country destinations. However, in order to implement the mandate of the Native Act, IANTA is asking less than $5 million for three interior agencies, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the National Park Service, and the Bureau of Land Management. We believe this investment in Indian country will attract 3 million new visitors to Indian country by 2020. And that was with a minimum of a 5%, 5% across, based upon, again, the U.S. Department of Commerce. The annual revenue will increase to an estimate of $13 billion annually. Our goal by 2020 is that tribes and tribal members in many states will have tourism development training, have been consulted by federal agencies, guided through assessments of their tourism potential and product development. They will be collaborating with nearby public lands, with labor, housing, arts, and humanities, and other agencies to expand the capacity to serve visitors. Tribes will have the increased capacity and become better organized. Their presence on the IANTA-run destination website, nativeamerica.travel, and other marketing will have attract thousands and additional international and domestic visitors. We will have improved data and analysts leading to investments and infrastructure. Indian country tourism is an opportunity for advancement that reinforces, does not diminish our Native culture and history and pride. It actually perpetuates and gives pride to our Indian Native American and adds value to and enhances our visitors industry. This is good for the USA. 1 billion overseas travelers annually guarantee a long, prosperous life for Indian country tourism if we fund the Native Act implementation. We are proud to have the appropriations request supported by the the U.S. Travel Association, the Affiliated Tribes of the Northwest Indians, the State of Washington Indian Affairs, Nevada Intertribal Council, the All Pueblo Council Governors, Rocky Mountain Leaders Association, Minnesota tribal organizations, and other industry leaders and tribal organizations. To succeed in tourism, Indian country needs 3 things: the collaboration of federal agencies, additional Native workforce capacity, and an improved infrastructure. These challenges are doable because IANTA and BIA have provided technical assistance and training for cultural tourism development, and Congress has given Indian Country the Native Act to encourage economic prosperity. And again, Gunakchish, which is thank you in my Tlingit language, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. See, Chief Harris, I was wondering, your agreement with South Carolina, I guess they have limits on gaming in South Carolina. That's why you're limited to bingo, and you can't negotiate a compact with the state that would be.
It's one of those things where the state has actually.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's one of those things where the state has actually ruled against us. And under our agreement, it said that, that we could have on our reservation that which the state has authorized. Well, the state has authorized gaming, but it goes out 3 miles into federal territorial waters. Our reservation is federal territorial land. Mm-hmm. So their Supreme Court ruled that, it was, we have to go out 3 miles. Well, we're landlocked, but they did authorize it. So it didn't say in the agreement that it had to be where their gaming was. It just said if the state authorized it, the Catawba Nation was allowed to have that which was authorized by the state.
And the state of, and also in the state, I assume because the school, you don't probably pay, do you pay local property tax within South Carolina?
Well, that was what led us to the school tax on when we did the settlement agreement in 1993. We were allowed to take 3,600 acres into federal trust. Mm-hmm. The beauty of this is the Catawba Nation has only taken 307 acres into federal trust. So we did not actually impede the tax base, but yet we were charged an out-of-county rate for our students. That was equivalent to, currently right now, is $4,500 per student for public school.
Yeah, I can see. So your main problem is not with the U.S. government, it's the problem is in South Carolina.
Well, I think, it took three of us to come together, the Catawba Nation, the federal government, and the state of South Carolina, to actually work our way into this fiasco. So maybe between, Catawba Nation and the federal government, we can work our way out of it.
Right, okay. Mr. Francis, I agree with you. We have trust obligations. This committee is very aware of it, and we try to do the best we can under the limits we have financially, but we try to make sure that we fully fund our contract health service, and I know we have some challenges on education and so forth. As far as the workforce is concerned, I think every agency can be more efficient, and so hoping that every agency looks at ways that over time to create more efficient, just as the private sector does. And so, and I don't think the BIA is immune to that. So I just wanted to make that point.
Well, I appreciate it, and again, appreciate the opportunity to get some of these things. We realize we're preaching to the choir here a lot of times, and you folks have fought the hardest on behalf of Indian Country in these areas. We're extremely appreciative of all your efforts, and on behalf of USET, as the newly elected president, very proud president of USET and the powerful nations we represent. Thank you for having these hearings, and also for your attention, and not only that, but the effort and results we've obtained over the years.
Thank you. And, we, by the way, we've been hearing from a number yesterday from 40 tribes, and the opioid abuse seems to be the common theme here, and not just in Native American country, but throughout the country. I think there's 1,000 deaths a day from opioid abuse right now. It's the biggest, it's terrible. So we need to do more. And I'm sorry you weren't invited to that summit. I think that's probably an oversight that somebody made. I'm sure that Tom would want you there, and certainly the Native Americans there to give testimony. And tourism's a good thing. So I've been up to Alaska a number of times, and a lot of Native tribes up in Alaska, and certainly through Nevada and Arizona, and so that's a big part of business, I'm sure, for everybody here. So we need to encourage that, and we'll see what we can do.
I appreciate that.
to
Thank
do
you.
that. Ms. McCollum?
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'd like to yield to the gentlewoman
Sure.
from Maine, Ms. Pingree.
Now I got all the time in the world. No, I understand the chair's trying to keep us on track this morning, so I won't take up too much time, and I thank the ranking member for yielding. Thank you all for being here on the panel today, and in particular, I'm very proud to have two people from Maine here, and really appreciate your testimony. And I don't need to reiterate everything you said because I think you were very eloquent. I appreciate the chair recognizing that the opioid epidemic is particularly challenging in most of our states, but also in even more difficult ways for the tribes. So the request on extra enforcement and the way you laid it out, Councilwoman Smith, about the lack of enforcement up and down the coast. So we really would support that that request. And also, in our state, we're particularly concerned, as you articulated, about potential cuts at the EPA and the impact they could have on the tribe, since our state has been at odds at time, and in our state, it's not necessarily partisan. It's just there's a feeling amongst some people who represent state government, and we've been fortunate to have the EPA assisting in keeping the river clean. We're very excited about the return of the salmon, and I'm glad to know that they're happy.
They're happy.
Because I just feel that's going to make even more of them want to come. And they'll be reproducing even more. But that is really important, and it was wonderful that two members of this committee did sign on to the amicus brief, because I know that's been beneficial. The one thing I'll let you talk about just a little bit before we get cut off. I do think we have a particularly challenging role with our land claim settlement, and I'm sympathetic to South Carolina. I can see that many states have had difficulties in how these have panned out. But now, Chief Francis, because you're at USET, and congratulations in your new position, you've seen a lot of different settlements, and maybe just make a couple more comments for the benefit of the committee about how hard this has been for our tribe and how it compares to some of the other settlement agreements.
Sure. So just briefly, at USET, I believe we have 8 tribes that are affected by some form of restrictive settlement act that states have been able to use to, one, assume a delegated responsibility to tribes through exercising what amounts to a plenary authority over Indian tribes, but really having no legal responsibility or fiduciary or trust responsibility to tribes. So in Maine, for example, we have a clause in our act that says tribe acts passed for the benefit of Indians generally, and I'm paraphrasing, after 1980 will not apply in Maine unless the state of Maine and the tribes agree. Well, for close to 40 years, we've not gotten one agreement from the state of Maine on anything, whether it's Taloa, VAWA, the Hearth Act, on and on. So, and certainly not the Indian Game and Regulatory Act. So we've been hampered in a lot of ways, despite the fact that we run over 100 federal programs. We have 19 departments, about 300 government employees that provide a comprehensive service. And that's not unlike every tribe affected with this issue. So the tribes, it's not just an economic issue, it's really a social issue. And as Councilwoman Smith mentioned earlier, our ability to address things like the opioid crisis really requires the tribe, and I think what Congress has very wisely decided in these areas of violence against women and other things is that a local response is going to produce the best results to these things. So, and as she also stated, on the ground, Maine Drug Enforcement Agency, our folks, Maine Department of Environmental Protection, and our folks on the ground, they work famously together. We tend to mess those things up at our level in this struggle over power, and nobody's taken responsibility for the conditions. So I think these unique things have to be looked at. Congress is a party to these things. We have great engagement by Department of Interior over the last couple of years. We've held roundtables in Maine with several federal agencies, members of the delegation, and we're just looking for a path forward to allow the tribe to simply benefit no more, no less than anyone else from the conditions we're trying to fix here, and make you all understand that there are tribes getting left behind on those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much.
Thank
for
you,
your
and
testimony.
I thank this panel. I appreciate it, and have a good day, and we hope to help you out here a little bit. Yep. All right, next we have Paul Torres, Chairman of the Pueblo Council of Governors, Michael Chavaria, Governor of the Pueblo of Santa Clara, and Virgil Sio, Governor of the Pueblo of Laguna.
Mr. Chair, as the distinguished panel is taking their seats, I'm wondering if either you or I, or if Mr. Cole and I should, as co-chairs of the Native American Caucus, write to our fellow appropriators about looking at some of the other issues that keep getting brought up in testimony, whether it's judiciary, housing, education, CDC, some of the other accounts in which there are grants made to Native American communities as they're making their budgetary decisions to think of how it's going to affect
I
the
have
Indian
a feeling
country.
that most of those accounts are probably in Tom's allocation, but you're right, we should.
Most of them are, but there's the judiciary accounts and the housing
No,
accounts that are not,
It
so.
would, that would probably be helpful. Let them-
Okay, thank
that'd
you,
be
Mr.
great.
Chair.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for coming out here today, and I'm glad to recognize Paul Torres, Chairman of the El Pueblo Council of Governors first. Recognized for 5 minutes. Make sure you have the mic on there.
Good morning, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Paul Torres, and I am the chairman of the El Pueblo Council of Governors, a tribal consortium comprised of 19 pueblos in New Mexico and one pueblo, Isleta del Sur, from Texas. Natural resources protection. The APCG encourages congressional support for effective natural resource management, particularly in regards to the National Forest Service and interior forestry programs. Our forests play critical roles in economic development, disaster mitigation, recreation, and regional ecology for birds and wildlife. They also play an irreplaceable role in our traditional practices and ceremonies. Cuts in federal funding for natural resource management at the Interior, Forest Service, and USDA threaten the delivery of services in each of these areas. We respectfully request additional funding for interior forestry programs and the funding of the National Forest Service at least at the FY 2016 enacted level to maintain our national forests and their diverse resources for future generations. NAGPRA funding. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the subcommittee and Congress for providing the $1 million to support NAGPRA-related law enforcement activities under the 2017 Omnibus. Dedicated funding for BIA law enforcement advances stronger federal protections for cultural patrimony put in place under the Protect Patrimony Resolution. We thank you for your support and encourage continued funding in this important area going forward. The Bears Ears National Monument. My testimony on the need for greater protections for tribal cultural patrimony would be incomplete without a discussion of the cultural landscapes that define us as Pueblo and Native peoples, including Bears Ears. While I understand that Bears Ears is not directly an appropriations matter, the designation of Bears Ears cultural landscape as a national monument is of critical importance to tribes, and funding for its protection represents money well spent by the subcommittee. As Pueblo people, we do not just reside on the beautiful land of the southwestern United States. We are the people of this land. We carry it in the very essence of our being. Our cultural heritage is passed down not only through tangible objects protected by NAGPRA and the Protect Patrimony Resolution, but also in the living landscapes of our tribal and Pueblo communities. Our ancestral ties to Bears Ears, for example, run deep beneath the soil of the greater Cedar Mesa area and are visible in the ancient roads, dwellings, and petroglyphs that enrich the entire region. However, these sites are under constant threat by erosion, human damage such as vandalism and off-road vehicle use, and the general degradation of the natural landscape. The continuation and very existence of our traditional practices in this area are in an immediate and unacceptable risk. The open 15-day comment period for Bears Ears will close on May the 26th, and it is entirely too short to address our complex concerns. Moreover, only online comments are being accepted. As my written testimony describes in further detail, our Pueblo communities and Indian country in general face tremendous discrepancies in access to broadband services. How can the Secretary expect meaningful tribal comments and consultation when many of us do not have internet access to have our voice heard? We urge Congress to protect our cultural heritage by providing designated funding for the preservation of Bears Ears National Monument in the FY 2018 budget. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the natural resource concerns of the All Pueblo Council of Governors. We look forward to working with you on advancing the critical funding needs of Indian country programs under the FY 2018 budget. Hawa.
Thank you. Next, Michael Chavera, Governor of the Pueblo of Santa Clara.
Good morning. Ang singi tamo. Newe hawi hi ang shalo ma in het akiki umi aking wepe ki aki na han wepe umi aking na ko in hinko. Out of respect out of my native language of Tewa, just asked lay down the respect and may I speak in front of this committee. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Well, good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Michael Chavria. I serve as governor for Santa Clara Pueblo there in New Mexico. I also serve as the secretary for the All Pueblo Council of Governors. Today I'm here on behalf of my Pueblo, which is Santa Clara. As a subcommittee is well aware, the process of appropriating the federal budget reflects the political nature of the government-to-government relationship and is reflective of the federal government's trust responsibility to Indian tribes and communities. The federal government's trust responsibility is to be fulfilled by regular, direct, and meaningful tribal consultation, which provides tribal leaders an opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue that affects federal issues, but also affects their direct actions on us as tribal communities. And so that's what's very important. So today's an opportunity is also a form of tribal consultation. This enables us as tribal leaders to voice our concerns for our people, our resources, our lands, our water. We still live off the land, utilize the resources that ties into our tradition, our culture, but it comes back down to our native languages. And so that's very important. Santa Clara is a self-governance tribe, meaning we have assumed control over federal programs. We can now redesign those federal programs to best meet the needs of our people and our communities in Santa Clara. We provide a full range of governmental services that include education, elder care, public works, law enforcement, tribal courts, to support the personal growth of our people and our communities in Santa Clara. Our inherent powers of self-governance are rooted in our tribal sovereignty, as recognized by the United States Constitution, treaties, federal law, Supreme Court cases, and other agreements. The Office of Self-Governance in the Interior plays a pivotal role in supporting the exercise of our tribal sovereignty by advocating for and implementing tribal self-governance statutes and federal policies. However, they are staffed of 16. However, there's 277 tribes, federally recognized tribes, that now operate self-governance programs, a ratio of almost 17 to 1. The Interior, however, currently provides only 1.5 million on a recurring basis for that office. However, their need is almost $2 million. Again, that's to employ full-time staff. The office is constantly operating in a deficit, which impairs its ability to fully support self-governance tribes and the delivery of essential, timely services to our people. Self-governance is the cornerstone of modern tribal sovereignty. Supporting tribal self-determination necessary entails supporting the mission of the Office of Self-Governance. So again, we therefore urge Congress to support their investment in self-governance tribes by providing full funding for the Office of Self-Governance. Also for law enforcement, a key expression of our tribal sovereignty is the provision of public safety and law enforcement services, such as police, firefighters, tribal court systems, rehabilitation services, child protection services, among others, which enable tribal leaders to provide a safe and vibrant environmental community or safe communities for our Pueblo. However, the Pueblo was deeply alarmed by the overnight shutdown of the Emerald Corporation's Turning Point incarceration rehabilitation program there in Yuma, Arizona on April 7th. Our Pueblo has seen many positive benefits from that program, including a successful rehabilitation rate of 76% of substance abusers and a reduced Pueblo crime rate of almost 50% over the past 4 years. Yet we received no advance notice of that shutdown. And the closure has resulted in the immediate increases in detention costs and left our law enforcement officers and tribal courts scrambling to find appropriate placements for those individuals. Tribal members who would have been benefited or beneficiaries from these essential services are now left without inadequate aid and assistance in their more pressing time of need, again, within their life. So we are requesting significant funding to implement a similar program at an alternative center. We also request that the Office of Justice Services actively consult with tribes as part of the decision-making process going forward to avoid any crisis in the future. And so that's very important. Again, comes back down to tribal consultation. So again, members, chairman, members of the committee, I thank you for the time to testify regarding the FY18 budget. I look forward and stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Next is Virgil Sio, Governor of the Pueblo of Laguna.
Good morning, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and distinguished members of the committee. On behalf of the Pueblo of Laguna, I thank you very much for the opportunity to provide our testimony today. Our Pueblo is one of the original 19 pueblos located in the state of New Mexico. Our existence has been since time immemorial. We are located west of Albuquerque and currently have approximately 8,700 tribal members. Our reservation is over 550,000 plus acres. I will speak to 4 of our priorities in my testimony today, one being litigation, negotiation, funding for water rights. The Pueblo is a party to a general stream adjudication of the Rio San Jose Basin, state of New Mexico versus Kerr-McGee, filed in 1983. The system provides the only water source for our Pueblo. In the years 2014 through 2016, we have received $290,750 from the BIA. During this same period, the Pueblo expended $2.7 million of its own funds protecting our water. We ask that funding be increased through funds provided to the BIA to support the Pueblo's efforts to protect this precious resource. Bureau of Indian Education. Last year, the Pueblo of Laguna Department of Education was one of 10 applicants selected to have its severely outdated and dilapidated BIA-funded Laguna Elementary School replaced. The 2017 appropriations lacked the funds necessary for new school construction. Instead, there's merely an allocation of $130 million nationwide for operations and maintenance and emergency repairs. The Pueblo has completed the planning phase and is ready to begin the design phase and move to the construction phase. We ask that funding be made available for the construction of the new Laguna Elementary School. The estimate of planning phase construction cost is approximately $24 million. The Pueblo requests these funds be made available in its 2018 budget. Regarding Indian Health Services and the Affordable Care Act, The health care services at the Indian Health Center, Service Acoma, Laguna, Canyocito, ACL facility have been inadequate and severely underfunded for decades. Referrals to specialists for services have been non-existent, except for individuals who have critical needs. The 2017 appropriations only includes $14 million nationwide for purchase/referred health care. This is inadequate to serve the needs to American Indians across the nation. The Pueblo requests that funding for this program be increased. In addition, Laguna has established a community health and wellness department through a Public Law 93-638 contract with IHS, including the Community Health Representative Program. This program is one of the few programs that places people in the homes of some of our most at-risk tribal members, shut-ins, and elders who cannot easily leave their homes. We believe this funding is critical and ask that it be increased, not eliminated. Regarding Environmental Protection Agency, our Pueblo has had the world's largest open pit mine in operation for approximately 30 years. It was known as the Jackpile Mine. It closed in 1982. On December 12, 2013, the U.S. EPA listed the site on the National Priorities List, making it a Superfund site. Since then, we have worked with EPA to address issues related to the site. We ask for continued funding and support for the Jackpile Superfund site cleanup and for the EPA's actions to appropriately pressure the principally responsible parties into compliance and cleanup of the site. We also need support for the removal of the home state tailings pile near Milan, New Mexico, and increased efforts on reducing and contaminating the toxic plume spreading south and contaminating both shallow and deep aquifers. In addition, solid waste management on Indian lands is an issue because most pueblos and tribes do not have sufficient tax base to support efficient solid waste management, including recycling and current policy and reducing the ability of the EPA to support those activities on Indian lands. Regarding Clean Water Act, Section 106 funding, this program is critical for the Pueblo to protect its water resources. Any reduction could potentially impact the program's ability to protect the water resources. I thank you for the opportunity to testify today and to provide our views and priorities for funding. I am happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, and appreciate your being here. Mr. Torres, one thing I wanted to let you know on the forest program, because that is important. Mike Simpson, who's a member of this committee, has a bill would allow us to use the disaster account for these catastrophic fires, which would then allow the U.S. forest folks to manage their accounts more effectively. They would like to spend more money and managing the forests in the United States, but it's difficult when we use up all the money in these catastrophic fires of late. 1% of the fires burn up literally 90% of our forest accounts. So we need to get support. You might mention that to whoever your member of Congress is to support this bill. It's supported by all the members of this committee, and we're pushing to get this thing done this year, which would be very, very helpful. As you know, Bears Ears is a little controversial, certainly for folks in Utah and some other parts of the area. Some other tribes obviously have different opinions, and so this is a review process that's going on right now. We'll see where that ends up. And certainly we, Mr. Chavarria, we believe in self-governance, and we're happy that you're taking on that responsibility and effectively representing your people. And I know this issue of drugs has been consistent with virtually all the tribes that come here. It is a national epidemic, and so we need to all work together to get this under control. And Mr. CEO, we certainly are aware of our difficulties with health care. We actually have, it's about $1 billion that goes into purchase referred care out of our budget. It's still not enough, but we're doing the best we can with what we have allocated, but we have a responsibility there. We know that. We're trying to do as much as we can to do that, and we'll continue to work on making sure we have the resources available for Native Americans nationwide. And we'll take a look at, these Superfund sites and brownfield sites around America. We need to push EPA to get these sites cleaned up and get back to economic order again. So, this is all over the country, so these things go on forever. And I'm sure you're sharing that frustration. Since 1984, and progress is slow probably. And I don't know your situation specifically, but I suspect that's the case.
Yes, thank you, sir. It's been ongoing for quite a while, so we'd like to get that,
You like
cleaned
to
up.
get that. What do they mine there?
They mined uranium.
Oh, yeah, okay. I know exactly where your mine is. Yeah, that was the World War II effort. That's where most of our uranium ore was. That's correct. Yeah, I've been by there. Ms. McCullum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the gentleman of the panel, I've been conferring with staff behind me based on your comments, trying to get a quick answer for you. It appears, Mr. Torres, that written comments related to barriers are being accepted, but probably not very user-friendly for people to find it on the website, and that which goes to your point, you have to be on a website to find out if you can submit written testimony. So I'm going to speak with the House members from New Mexico. I know we found out Mr. Senator Heinrich has a letter going out instructing the Department of Interior to make it more user-friendly for comments to be made. We're going to do something similar in the House, and I'll work with your the New Mexico delegation on there. So, but if you're to your point, if you don't have internet and you can't get on the department's website because you don't have internet, then how do you know what you can do? And lots of times now we aren't publishing things in newspapers, and we aren't buying a radio spot to comment on that because we're just leaving it all up to the internet. And I've been out in your part of the world, and it's very spotty reception and very difficult for some people to access the internet. So thank you so much for raising that, and we'll do what we can. However, for the record, I do want to state I don't necessarily agree that the president has the right to revoke a national monument, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to make sure that people don't have an opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Ms. McCollum. I met with Senator Heinrich yesterday, and we talked about that. I have a copy of that letter that he sent to the secretary, but the governors are having a meeting on Monday, and I'm going to make a recommendation that they do a letter to Secretary Zinke requesting extension of this time period. So the governors will be addressing that very soon.
And if I could maybe ask you gentlemen to comment on something. So I've had and I do mean a privilege to be in some of the pueblos and some of the areas in which there are sacred sites. And they're not marked for a reason. And that reason is because of the looting that takes place and the disrespect that takes place. And so the fact that these sacred sites haven't been marked, then sometimes people are saying, well, these really don't exist, or people are, I'm just cutting to the chase here, people are making it up. I mean, you've heard all the excuses not to honor sacred sites. So if maybe you would just take a second to say how important it is that the respect be given, that you don't go out and identify sacred sites, because what happened to the tribes in Standing Rock when they did start identifying sacred sites, when the pipeline was going through, was looting and just harmful activities taking place on the sacred sites.
Thank you.
Well, if I could respond, you did mention that is the concern. If we do identify those and plot them on a map, that we'll have individuals go in there and actually start digging or looting those particular sites. And those sites are very sacred to us. They go centuries back. When we still make pilgrimages to those sites. However, that is not made public. We still take sacred items there and ask for a help from our ancestors to continue moving forward in this world. So they are sacred to us. Thank you.
And if I could, just one more question. Is the Laguna school, is that where the earthquake was? I was out in that area. Was that where the earthquake was?
At one point, there was a minor earthquake, yes, and it did affect the school. It did, put little cracks in the building. Right now, the gym for that school is held up by I-beams to support the gymnasium. So it's been condemned several times, and it's been refurbished, but I think it's about time that we get a new school replaced.
Mr. Chair, at one point, I had been in one of the buildings, and they had put this piece of metal mesh on it because they were measuring whether or not the building was cracking any farther. They had condemned the building, but the Bureau painted the building, and it was magic paint because it went from being condemned to not being condemned. So I think this is a school we should look at, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as you know, we're trying to figure out a way to come up with significant funds to do the schools around America. We have a big challenge ahead of us on that. But, Ms. Pingree, excuse me. Okay. Sorry, thank you. Okay, thanks for this panel. We appreciate it. And have a great day.
Come and visit us in New Mexico.
Well, I love New Mexico. It's a great state.
I'm going to find myself some of that paint.
There you go. See our next panel, Robert Valencia, Edward Manuel, and Walter Phelps. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you today? Good. Okay. Good morning. Just take your seat there. And first, we're going to recognize Robert Valencia, Chairman of the Pascua Yaqui tribe. Welcome, and you're recognized for 5 minutes. You might, turn on your mic. That would be great. Thank you.
My name is Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCallum, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Robert Valencia. I'm the chairman of the Pascua Yaqui tribe. With me today is Councilwoman Rosa Soto Alvarez. The tribe appreciates the opportunity to testify before the subcommittee today. I would like to speak in support of appropriations within the Department of Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and the Indian Health Service for American Indian and Alaskan Native programs. It is important that you hear the voices from across the Indian country today so that you may know the importance of federal programs to tribes and tribal peoples. A fully funded budget for the BIA and IHS are essential to support many important programs that help improve the lives of tribal members. The Pascua Yaqui tribe is a sovereign nation located in southern Arizona. The tribe has a reservation southwest of Tucson with a non-reservation population of about 5,000 members. The total population of the Pascua Yaqui tribe is close to 20,000 members. In addition to the reservation, which comprises 2,216 acres, the tribe also has several predominantly Pascua Yaqui communities off the reservation throughout southern and central Arizona. These communities predate the tribe's federal recognition in 1978 and the designation of the reservation at the time. While not trust lands, these Pascua Yaqui communities are home to tribal members for whom the tribe provides services including housing, health care, and various other costly services and programs. The Pascua Yaqui tribe is governed by a tribal council comprised of 11 elected members. The tribal council wants to support tribal self-determination for the improvement of life for tribal members, while a few of the tribe's programs are direct services programs through the BIA, including BIA detention. Many of the tribe's programs are through PL 93638 self-determination contracts. Today, I would like to provide testimony to let you know the Pascua Yaqui tribe's views and recommendations on the FY 2018 budget for the BIA and Department of Health and Human Services, Indian Health Services, IHS. One concern of the Pascua Yaqui tribe is that the Toahi initiative remained fully funded and even increased. The tribe is a recent recipient of Toahi initiative funding. Today, the tribe has received about $800,000 in funding to improve system coordination, integration of service delivery among Yaqui government agencies to Yaqui families. A Child and Family Networking Board coordinates efforts of tribal departments to improve coordination of all of tribal programs and the use of resources available to the tribe's communities. The goal is to increase department collaboration and thus improve outcomes for families. The funding also supports the tribe's work under the Indian Child Welfare Act, providing funding for programs that keep Indian families together. The tribe specifically asks that Tuahi Initiative funding remain at FY 2017 levels in 2018, if not receiving an increase. The need is great, and the tribe is seeking to fully implement the program to maximize its benefit for tribal members. It would leave a tremendously beneficial program unfinished, and the tribe would not be able to sufficiently fund these programs without support through the initiative. The Pascua Yaqui tribe was one of the pilot project tribes in implementing the special domestic violence criminal jurisdiction enacted by VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act. Although the tribe has been pursuing VAWA prosecutions, which call for more qualifications of attorneys and judges, the tribe has also had to expend significant resources to do so. Currently, the Office of the Prosecutor receives only 14.8% of its budget from federal support. An increase to funding for justice services is essential to help the tribe continue its implementation of VAWA, as well as prosecutions under the Tribal Law and Order Act, TLOA. These laws are helping bring domestic violence perpetrators and offenders committing serious crimes to justice and have been highly successful on the Pascua Yaqui tribe's reservation. However, cuts in funding would be a disaster to these programs, which are in their infancy. The tribe requests funding for VAWA prosecutions and for serious prosecutions under TLOA. The tribe has had long-standing issues with the detention of prisoners incarcerated by the order of tribal courts. The detention services are direct services provided by the BIA, yet the tribe finds that the beds are limited. Often the BIA insists that we pick up prisoners or house them at our short-term facility for longer than is right. BIA detention needs better funding. They often run out of funds for prison contract beds, leaving tribes to deal with inmates that are BIA's responsibility. We recently learned that our prisoners will be moved further down from the tribe's reservation after the BIA lost its contract with the Emerald Corporation in San Luis. All the vehicles in our police fleet are high-mileage vehicles. At least one new vehicle is needed to use for transfer to and from the new facility that BIA will contract with. But importantly, the BIA detention services needs increased funding to better serve the tribe. Other important programs that the tribe hopes you will support are social service programs, education, BIA, water programs, housing, and IHS. The tribe hopes you will continue to support for full funding of the contract support costs for both BIA and IHS. This is a paramount concern to the tribe. Full funding of contract support costs makes it possible for the tribe's program to function properly, and we ask you that you continue to support it. I submitted a full statement with greater detail in writing. I would like to thank you again for the opportunity to present and for your attention to all the critical needs of the Pascua Yaqui tribe, as well as the Indian country. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Edward Manuel, Chairman of the Tohono Nation. Close?
Very close.
Okay.
Good morning, Chairman Calvert. Good morning, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Edward D. Manuel. I'm Chairman of the Tohono Nation, located in Arizona. It's a federally recognized tribe, 34,000 members, and it's one of the largest reservations in Arizona, or throughout the United States as well. We also share 62 miles of the international boundary with Mexico. It's one of the longest shared international border of any Indian tribe in the United States. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify in regard to the nation's federal funding priorities. First, I would like to present our water settlement challenges. The Tohono Nation is facing a serious water crisis due to the federal government's ongoing failure to fund the nation's historic water settlement, the Southern Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act, known as SWARSA. Source authorized up to $32 million for a cooperative fund to pay for the delivery of the nation's water entitlement. And directed the Secretary of the Interior to inform Congress of the amount of money necessary to carry out the settlement. However, the Interior has never requested any of these funds to inform Congress that this settlement will be in jeopardy without the cooperative funding. The Bureau of Reclamation projects that our settlement may run out of funding for water deliveries within 3 years. We don't want to close the tribal farms, lay off employees, default on crop loans, and the breach of related agreements. Our water settlement is meaningless without water. We respectfully request that the committee direct the Secretary of Interior to provide notice of the federal fund, of the cooperative funding shortfall, and that funding be included in the FY 2018 budget and not jeopardize the Southern Arizona Water Rights Settlement Act. Next, I'll turn into law enforcement. Tohono Nation faces significant and unique law enforcement challenges because of our shared border with Mexico and the size of the reservation. Our police patrol remote and isolated areas that are difficult to access. Radio communication among tribal and federal law enforcement agencies is also unreliable. As a result, officers face increasing, sometimes unnecessary risks in the field. Due to our extensive shared border with Mexico, drug trafficking, illegal immigration, and border security divert limited tribal police resources from our communities. While the nation works closely with Border Patrol and other law enforcement agencies, we spend millions of dollars in tribal revenues annually to help meet federal border security responsibilities. Additional funding is desperately needed to improve communication, hiring and training officers, vehicles, and addressing the overcrowded jail, and to improve the security of police stations. Next, I'll discuss road funding. The nation has hundreds of miles of damaged and poorly maintained roads. Inadequate BIA funding, heavy monsoon rains, flooding, and heavy usage by Border Patrol vehicles. 200 Border Patrol agents utilize these roads 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of these contribute to the poor road conditions. During the monsoon season, flooding washes out bridges, isolate communities, strands children on school buses, and prevents access for emergency vehicles. Sadly, a number of our people have been killed by flooding while traveling on these roads. Despite years of discussion, BIA and Border Patrol cannot agree on how they can share existing appropriations and authorities to fund the repair of the roads damaged by Border Patrol vehicles. All that is needed is a technical legislative fix. The nation's written testimony contains draft legislation language to make the technical fix. We ask that the subcommittee work with the Homeland Security Subcommittee and consider including that language in the proper appropriations bill. Finally, I would like to address healthcare funding. Tohono Nation Hospital that serves the nation itself, Arizona, is over 50 years old. It's one of the oldest facilities in the IAS. The hospital is completely inadequate to meet the nation's healthcare needs. Our hospital has been listed for replacement for over 2 decades. However, the backlog is so bad that there still are several projects ahead of us on the IHS priority listing. Even with the requested budget increase, it is still unlikely that the nation's hospital will be funded. Additional funding is desperately needed for IHS to address this backlog. We ask the committee to provide substantial increase in the IHS facilities budget. In conclusion, the nation appreciates the subcommittee's dedication to provide Indian country with much needed resources in a very challenging fiscal climate. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manuel, for your testimony. Next, Walter Phelps, good to see you again. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and Honorable Member Pengree. My name is Walter Phelps. I chair the Navajo-Hopi Land Commission for the 23rd Navajo Nation Council. My colleagues and I on the Navajo-Hopi Land Commission are entrusted with addressing ongoing efforts of the relocation and people being relocated off their ancestral lands, as well as dealing with the realities of the 9 chapter communities within the former Bennett Freeze area in Western Navajo Nation. First, I want to still once more express appreciation for the subcommittee for your efforts in paying a special attention to the complex and important matters. Since the visit by this subcommittee to Navajo Nation in January 2015, some very good progress has been made. The increased funding made possible by this subcommittee has dramatically accelerated the delivery of benefits to many who have been on a waiting list for many years. As you are aware, the Office of Navajo-Hopi Indian Relocation was established by Congress to carry out relocation activities and serve as a trustee and federal land administrator to the Navajo Nation. Unfortunately, although the Office of Navajo-Hopi Indian Relocation carried out its charge, the work was done at a very slow pace. However, as a result of increased funding, ONER, in its November 14, 2016 report, stated that by the end of September 30th, 2016, there remained a total of 74 eligible qualified applicants ready to receive housing benefits, 119 pending appeals to be addressed in fiscal year 2017, and 3 pending cases before federal district courts. In ONER's report, it further states, our goal, and I quote, our goal has always been to assure that all relocation activities are conducted by the office are consistent with the intent of Congress and the executive branch as expressed in the Navajo-Hopi Settlement Act of 93, Public Law 93-531, and the Navajo-Hopi Indian Relocation Amendments Act, Public Law 96-305. Let me point out that in 1981, the same office provided a report and plan to Congress by stating Congress was greatly concerned that relocation of Indian families to be to areas where community facilities and services exist or will exist. The Commission's plan for relocation shall, order Congress, assure that housing and related community facilities and services such as water, sewer, roads, schools, and health facilities for such households shall be available at their relocation sites. That was Public Law 93-531. The Commission intends to carry out this mandate with the same vigor as the sympathetic and generous Congress conceived it, unquote. The point is that the Relocation Commission failed to adequately address the requirements of the original act in assuring that housing and related community facilities and services such as water, sewer, roads, schools, and health facilities for such households shall be available at their relocation sites, unquote. In moving forward, my colleagues and I on the Navajo-Hopi Land Commission appreciate the need to bring closure to the relocation process. However, we believe that the federal government has a responsibility to bring closure about in a conscientious and compassionate manner and live up to the promise of a thorough and generous relocation. The second portion of my testimony has to do with the urgent need for rehabilitation of the 9 Navajo chapters in the former Bennett Freeze area in Western Agency. The freeze remained in effect from 1966 to 2006, during which development of housing, community facilities, economic development were restricted. Field hearings conducted by the Senate Interior Appropriations Subcommittee in 1993 concluded that the former Bennett Freeze area would require a sustained construction program implemented over a decade or more in order to recover and redevelop. We asked the subcommittee to support innovative incentives that can encourage private sector partnerships and investments and streamlining of federal regulations. We request funding for critical needs in the former Bennett Freeze area for safe drinking water, electricity, emergency response services, telecommunications, infrastructure, and community facilities. Lastly, we request establishment of a DOI task force for the benefit of the former Bennett Freeze rehabilitation. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony, and we appreciate that. I know there's some consistency here on law enforcement, and that's a challenge that we're going to have to deal with, and we're going to do the best we can under this committee. You have a particular challenge because of your border with Mexico. I've been down there. Has Homeland Security in any way done anything to help improve some of the roads or along the border there? And I'm also curious, what kind of infrastructure along the border have we put up? Anything at all, or is it just the old fence that still used to be there?
Working on the border.
Yeah.
Right now, they're working on the border roads.
Okay.
And also, they put in they call it the IFT towers, integrated fixed towers. And there's about 9 of them that are proposed on the main borderline, but also there's also 4 more that they're proposing along the mountain range. And they also have some FOBs, forward operating bases, 2 along the border in our land base, where the Border Patrol utilize those stations where they stay so many days a week, and then they leave and some more come in.
You still have a significant amount of drugs coming across that border?
There's still drugs coming through, yes.
Yeah. I'll certainly we'll talk to Homeland Security about this. Obviously, they have a responsibility. They're using your roads. They have a responsibility to help fix that. We need to get an infrastructure bill down here and have Indian country a part of it. And throughout, Navajos have issues on their roads, and I'm sure that whole place in the Southwest. So we'll certainly look into that and see if we can't be some assistance. Mr. Phelps, we've met a number of times and over the years, and hopefully we can close in on this. As you know, as a goal of mine is to, and I think of the committee, is to bring this to an end, to have the resources there to bring it to an end. And hopefully we're closing in on this after 40 years. That's a long time. And so hopefully we can, for everybody, for the Navajo people, for the Hopi people, for the American people, everybody, we can bring this to a positive conclusion. So,
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We have the same desire and goal, but we know that as a trustee, our people were given substantial commitments by this Congress, and we just want to remind our members and that that's what we still stand on. So we thank you for that.
All right, thank you.
And by the way, Congressman, the school that you visited.
Right.
We're going to do ribbon cutting on Friday if you want to come down.
Oh, great. I'd love to be down there. Yeah. I still remember that bus ride over.
Right, that's right.
Ms. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. And as the chair said, and we mentioned earlier, we need to get some of our other appropriating committees more engaged in some of the challenges or opportunities in Indian country, because these across-the-board cuts, if they're not mindful of how they're going to affect the work that this committee is doing, can have an unintended consequence of not moving Indian country forward. So thank you for your testimony.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we're going to call up our next panel. Jamie Hinio, Vice President of the Ramah Navajo Chapter. Marlene Martinez, President of the Ramah Navajo School Board for Pine Hill School. And Faye Blue Eyes, Administrative Services Director. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. Denise tried. Odith Heil Community Grant School. About as good as I can do. But thank you for attending. We'll see if we can get that door closed, and we'll move on. Okay, first, I recognize Robert Valencia, Chairman of the Jamie Hernino, Vice President of the Ramah Navajo Chapter. Welcome.
Yate, Honorable Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, and Committee Member Pingree. My name is Jamie Henio. I'm the Vice President of the Ramah Navajo Chapter, Ramah Band of Navajo Indians. I appreciate this opportunity to provide oral testimony regarding the Department of Interior BIA FY 2018 budget. The Ramah Navajo Chapter has 4 areas of concern in our written testimony. Number 1, inadequate and untimely distribution of 638 program funding. And 2, the lack of funding for adequate police officer salaries. And 3, the lack of funding for equipment and operation of our brand-new detention correctional facility. And 4, unmet needs for our transportation and road maintenance program. The chapter appreciates you holding these hearings on an annual basis, and over the years, you have listened to us and our concerns and have moved towards the resolutions on many of our concerns and issues. The Ramah Navajo Chapter has operated as a self-government since 1986 using the Public Law 93-638 contracting requirements. So therefore, number 1, my point is that there's inadequate funding for 638 contract programs as compared to BIA programs. Every year, the BIA, they put tribes through an exercise of prioritizing unmet needs and budget requests. And the Ramah Navajo Chapter, we comply with this exercise. But what happens is we rarely see any type of funding increases. While we operate on the same funding year after year, and BIA, while they operate similar programs, these programs see a substantial increase. This is our issue here, is that the BIA views the Ramah Chapter as a 638 tribe. So when it comes to appropriations and distribution of funds, we're told stand at the end of the line while the BIA central office and administrative programs get a bulk of that money. So what we're asking is that a lot of these funds be distributed to the front lines where we provide direct services to the people as it was intended. So, and then also if these funds are awarded, we need to have BIA distribute these funds in a timely manner. Many times we have to wait months at a time just to see any type of funding from the BIA. So what we're requesting for is that BIA be expressly directed to distribute the funds to tribal programs immediately upon appropriation. Number 2, our lack of funding for adequate police officer salaries. Pursuant to 25 CFR subsection 12.34, police officers operating under a 638 contract should be paid the same wages as a BIA police officer. To this point, BIA has not funded this mandate. The Ramah Navajo Chapter, we have a budget for 10 police officers to provide public service to the citizens of the Ramah Navajo community. But then our officers are severely underpaid. If you look at our written testimony, we've included data in there that shows the disparity between the Ramah Navajo police officer's annual wage, comparing that to a BIA police officer. And then we also included officers from the New Mexico State Police, from the nearby nearby Sheriff's Department, and also City of Gallup. And you'll see that the Ramah Navajo police officer is the lowest paid officer within that geographical area. And with this, we lose officers to these nearby agencies. We bring in a young police officer, we invest money in the officer, take him to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy, where they get federally certified. Then we also take him to the New Mexico State Police Academy for state certification and other specialized training. And when they come back, they're enticed by other agencies with higher pay. We need to keep our officers within our location. The third area of concern that we have is lack of funding for equipment and operation of our new detention facility. The Ramah Chapter was awarded TARP recovery grant money. And using the grant money along with other matching funds, we were able to construct a 13,000 square feet detention facility. In November of 2016, the BIA issued a certificate of occupancy, and our detention center is in full operation right now. And BIA has failed to award funds sufficient, though, to operate the facility in accordance with the BIA standards. They set their standards up here, but they only fund us at this level. So then we need to have an increase, have BIA fully fund the operations. And lastly, what we've also included as a concern is the unmet needs for our transportation and road maintenance program. We've included some data in our written testimony for reference. And we've contracted the roads program 3 years ago, and BIA has failed to sufficiently fund the program to adequately meet the road needs for our community. And so at the end, in closing, the Ramah Navajo chapter has been a successful steward, and we have been diligent in operating the Public Law 93-638 programs for many decades. And from the onset, we have had clean audits. So the Ramah Navajo chapter, we appreciate the continued support of Congress in our effort to build a sustainable community and to be resilient throughout the oncoming years. I stand for questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Next, Marlene Martinez, President of the Ramah Navajo School Board for the Pine Hill School. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay, good morning. Is on now? Okay. Good morning, Honorable Chair and committee members. My name is Marlene Martinez. I am the President of the Ramah Navajo School Board, Pine Hill Schools, and I appreciate the opportunity to allow us to provide oral testimonies to Congress on behalf of our schools. Today I am providing testimony on our school buildings that are showing signs of drastic aging and nearing its end of its useful life. After nearly a half century, our school buildings are showing significant wear and tear. These buildings deteriorated almost beyond repair, have inoperable heating systems, have unsafe water systems, and are unusable due to serious mold issues. In recent years, it has gotten to a point where the students have had to be sent home early due to cold classrooms or a water line break on campus that causes no water or low water pressure. The water lines on campus are corroded with rust. Our students are also exposed to the dangerous environment due to leaking roofs in certain classrooms or playing on the wet basketball court in the gymnasium and walking on crumbling sidewalks. The biggest concern is the presence of mold in our library in our kindergarten building. These buildings have been closed due to the health and safety of our students. This caused our students to be shuffled around to be housed in other areas of the facility. We are alarmed that due to the leaking roof in our gymnasium, the water caused the inside ceiling insulation to be exposed and the presence of mold has been detected. The insulation fiberglass particles may become airborne and cause a serious health issue to our students. Heating system in the high school building has been inoperable and outdated. The BIA committed to designing and installing a heating system in our high school since December 2016. The BIA is still in the bidding stage to repair the heating system. Our students have been subjected to the cold and has created a negative learning environment. It has been almost 6 years since the heating system has been inoperable. Our school facilities were built in the 70s and most do not meet the ADA requirements, therefore causing a challenge for our disabled students. Our students' academic performance has been negatively impacted by the substandard school facilities. If our students were not exposed to this type of learning environment, we believe they would be more successful academically. We fully support the committee and BIE to begin the effort towards replacing all BIE schools. Then our students would not have to be housed in aging, unsafe, and dilapidated buildings. We appreciate the commitment of Congress to continue funding school facilities so that the BIA-funded schools will begin planning, design, and construction of new school facilities. In the meantime, we request that Congress increase funding for emergency and minor improvement and repair projects so that schools such as Pine Hill can address the current deficiencies in our school buildings. And on behalf of the Ramah Navajo School Board, I would like to thank you for your time and the consideration of Congress to help schools out in Indian Country. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Next, Faye Blue Eyes, Administrative Services Director, and you can pronounce the
Okay.
school.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here on behalf of Zil Na O Delhi Community School. Local control schools such as ours educate our students to be contributing members of our community and to come and back and help our people. This focus has helped improve our students' performance. Our students' park assessment for the last 2 years has looked very promising. In some areas, our students have even outscored the national test assessment. If we were able to operate our schools without funding shortfalls and constant worries, we would think, wow, we could do a lot more better. Our students could even reach amazing heights. At the onset, we do want to recognize the testimony of the Nebo Olcott School Board organization and fully support their recommendations, such as fully fund new school construction, provide $109 million for facilities operation and $76 million for facilities maintenance, protect BIE and Indian education programs from sequestration or shutdown. Our school is proud to say that we have been one of the successful applicants for new school construction, and we're in the first round of the planning phase. As our school facilities were outdated and insufficient for our needs, we are looking forward to being able to offer a safe and improved school for our students. We will be completing the planning phase for our new school by July. We have worked closely with the BIA facilities staff in moving this project along and have made great success. We are on schedule and we are in line with our budget. If necessary, we hope this subcommittee will recognize that there must be flexibility and timelines for funding availability in these projects and work with us and the BIE on these matters. Our school is fortunate to be selected for new school construction. However, we feel for other Bureau-funded schools who also need school replacements. Their students and staff have to endure the same problems we have, such as water lines breaking, that we have to divert students to another part of the building for restroom, and that causes them to lose valuable instruction time. Or sewer lines breaking and our staff and students having to smell the awful sewer causing headaches. And again, inefficient heating and cooling, and it's too cold in the winter because the outdated aged boiler is down, or too hot because we don't have any air conditioners in our school. And we have obsolete utility systems where parts are no longer available. And it costs extra money to have parts actually be built again for some of our systems. That's another loss of funds for schools. At least for Tlao Delhi School, we see a light at the end of the tunnel. How many more years will the rest of the Bureau-funded schools have to wait to get their new schools? According to the Department of Interior's 2013 figure, the backlog of construction projects is now estimated to be as high as $1.3 billion. But we are encouraged by the substantial increase that this subcommittee provided for education construction in FY16 and maintained it for FY17. We believe BIE schools are due for full school replacement efforts like that provided for the Department of Defense schools, where 134 of their schools were rebuilt over 5 years beginning in 2011. Our school supports the call for full funding for school construction funds to immediately address this need. We urge the committee and the BIE to engage in consultation with tribal schools and tribes to begin the efforts towards modernization of all BIE schools. Lastly, we ask that Indian-related programs be protected from budget fights that result in sequestration or government shutdown. We join those in urging this subcommittee to include language in budget and appropriations bill that continue funding for Native and related programs through these challenges. Funding for our programs is scarce enough. Reductions for sequestration and shutdowns hit reservations extremely hard, and the students do feel the same stresses that affect their parents and neighbors. We look forward to working with the subcommittee on furthering the important work of our schools and enriching our students. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Let's go back to my notes here. First I want to talk about roads a little bit, since that has been brought up. We recognize we have a problem throughout the United States on roads in Indian country. And I've been on at least on the Arizona side, the Navajo reservation in Arizona. I suspect they're very similar to what you have in your part of the country in New Mexico, but they're in bad shape. So we have to, I'm hoping that we can all work, if we ever get around to an infrastructure bill, that we have a section in the bill for road construction throughout the United States and Indian reservations to rebuild those roads. So we can work together on doing that. On school construction, which both of you obviously are pushing at, is you're right. We have over $1 billion need, and we need to come up with like you mentioned, a DoD kind of program. Now, that was a public-private partnership that did that, and not just for schools, also for housing for the military, and it was very successful. We have to find a way to have an income that the Department of Defense was able to generate by moving off excess property that they had. We don't have that luxury on Native American countries, so we have to come up with a financial mechanism, which hopefully we can do, and figure out a way to finance this. And I'd like to see all the schools around the United States, both rebuilt and new construction, would be the goal. And I know that that's shared by this entire committee. So we hate to see kids going to schools that are in a difficult situation. We directed the BIE to do the analysis, the same thing that the Department of Defense did, which is a necessary step, and we're going to try to find a way to do this just like we did with the DoD schools.
Thank
With that, Ms. McCullum.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the frustrations, besides what the chairman, put, that we're trying to figure out different financing mechanisms, loans, repayments, grants. We're leaving no stone unturned to figure out how to really do a school renovation, rebuild, or remodel, as well as figure out a way to have a maintenance account, a cost, so that we keep up on maintenance. I mean, when you first notice your roof is leaking, you don't walk away from it. You should be able to pick up the phone and figure out what's causing the leak and get it repaired so it doesn't spread any farther. But I think one of the frustrations that's coming across a little bit too is when you, sir, pointed out the fact that the Bureau of Indian Affairs, isn't getting the contracts and the bids out in a timely fashion, is in part, we own that as a Congress when we're doing continuing resolutions and we don't get our bills closed and our homework done on time. We're talking schools here, so we need to hand our homework in on time. We need to complete the assignment, because when we do the continuing resolutions, the agencies are out there not sure at the end of the day what they're going to have for resources. And I know that this is something that the Appropriations Committee, we stand ready to get our work done on time. We just have to convince our other colleagues on both sides of the aisle that we want to complete the appropriation bills on time, and I know that's the goal of our chair and our ranking member at large, and our goals when we get our bills done. But some of this is, you know, we need to push the agencies to do a better job, but some of this is really not necessarily the agency's fault. It's been the inability of the entire Congress, both House and Senate, not to get their jobs completed in a timely fashion. So we need to do better by you as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I want to thank this panel for coming today and your testimony. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, thank you to this panel, and we appreciate your attendance. Okay, all right. The next panel is Genevieve Jackson, President, and I'll let her pronounce it, and Jerry Chavez, President of the Den Grant School Program, and Royd Lee, President of the Native America Grant School Association, School Board Member for the Shanto Preparatory School. At least we have 2 out of 3, okay. So is, oh, Royd, okay, here we go.
And
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, these are many different languages that we don't hear every day for many of these tribes, and I appreciate your willingness to boldly go with pronunciations that most Americans have never heard these languages spoken until today, so.
Well, as
Mr.
a former
Chair-
teacher, I hope you don't grade me on this.
No, Mr. Chair, I appreciate your willingness to try, and I can see the look on the faces of the tribal members as they come up. They're appreciating it too.
Okay, all right. Okay, there you go. Well,
I'm
thank-
Genevieve Jackson, President of the,
oh, do you have your mic on?
I don't have my
Mic,
school marm voice.
okay, there you go. You're
Yeah,
recognized.
I'm Genevieve Jackson, President of the Ultra School Board Association, also known as the BOSBA. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Honorable Calvert and Darren Benjamin, Ms. McCullum, and Ms. Pingree for giving us this time. We submit our position on FY 2018 budget requests and provide recommendations on the overall direction of the BIA education system. For the FY 2018 proposed commitment to self-determination, we support continued funding 100% of the administrative cost grants. On the Indian School Equalization Program, also known as ISEP, we can support an increase in the amount of $6.5 million. We'd also like to see an estimate of the funding needed to meet the DoD teacher pay requirements compared to the overall increase for Indian country and education. Facilities O&M, we support the increase of $6 million. This will reduce the problem of schools having to divert instructional dollars to keep the lights on. The failure through the years to adequately fund these line items results in minor repairs evolving into major repairs. For education program enhancements, the BIE requested an increase of $2 million. It is not clear how this funding is to be used. The justifications for the program have been rather vague and the results seem minimal. There needs to be a fair and transparent process established by which the tribes can apply for such funding. We questioned the funding of 26 FTEs with education program enhancement funds and the proposed increase of 8 more FTEs in the FY 2017 budget. The Bureau should consider transferring this line item to education program management budget to more accurately account for personnel. For school transportation, we support the retention of the FY 2016 level of $4 million increase in transportation. Historically, the funding in this line item has been inadequate to cover the full cost of the transportation program. The shortfall means that the school must take funding out of instructional programs just to get the students to school. On the broadband and IT enhancement, BIA received only a $2 million increase for information technology, far less than the $34 million actually needed. A great many innovative teaching techniques and materials, including testing materials, are based on digital platforms and cannot be used without such access. For the BIA school construction, we support the FY 2016 school construction funding level in the budget of $138 million, but with an increase of $7.5 million for employee housing. The lack of adequate housing for staff is a significant factor in teacher turnover in our schools. The current backlog of repair costs for employee housing is $107.8 million on Navajo Nation schools alone. We agree with the House report that reads, a more comprehensive long-term planning approach is needed for every campus and component facility in the BIA system, model after the Department of Defense education activity. On early childhood and family development, we support the increase of $4 million for the FACE program. We also support the release of the 2013-14 study and internal review of the program. On BIA education program management, we ask that the true implementation of the statute in 25 U.S.C. 2006 A and B would involve a transfer of functions, personnel, and funding from BIA to BIE, as well as provide new funding. These statutory provisions are consistent with the GAO recommendations and with language in House Report 114-632 and Senate Report 114-281. And these are our recommendations for the BIE education system and the reorganization. On the Budget Analysis Division for the 25 U.S.C. 2001H requires the Comptroller General to conduct a study to determine the adequacy of funding and formulas used by the Bureau to determine funding for programs operated by Bureau-operated schools. We believe these statutory mandates should be implemented. The GAO report 13-774 states its intention clearly, citing problems related to the organizational structure, accountability, finance, health, and safety and student performance. The department's reorganization plan does not address the GAO's recommendation and is not in compliance with applicable statutes. The Department of Defense education system receives its total funding through its own DoD appropriation. It is therefore free to develop its own educational programs to meet the special needs of the students it serves. We recommend that the BIA set aside funding from the Department of Education and ESSA be transferred to the interior budget for BIE. The BIE then should be required to have substantive consultations with the tribes, school staff, and BIA-funded school boards to further develop a unique education system based on self-determination and deemed most beneficial and effective for Indian youth. And I thank you for your time. I know it's going to be a long day for you, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
That's your hat.
Next, Jerry Chavez, President of the Dine Grant School Association. Welcome.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman and committee members. My name is Jerry Chavez, President of the Dine Grant School Association. We are comprised by 6 Navajo BIE-funded schools. As local school boards, we have both the greater freedom and the tremendous responsibility to ensure that our students receive high-quality, culturally relevant education that will help reach the fullest potential. We take this responsibility seriously, and we would like to thank this subcommittee for playing an important role in our students' success. Thank you. Our highest funding priorities are travel grant support costs, facility operations and maintenance, ISET formula funds, and BIE budget, as well as education, construction, and repair in the BIA budget. Today, I'm here to give our testimony of why federal funding is important to our local schools in Navajo land. We need continued funding to maintain our facilities so we can provide a safe environment for our students, to provide a high-quality education that will help our students achieve success. We want our principals, teachers, educational assistants, and all other key staff members to be up to date with training, and it costs money to provide them the tools to be effective in each role. Since 1988, tribally operated schools have received funding for administrative expense incurred for the operations of our school through our administrative cost grant, now called Tribally Grant Support Costs. These funds are used for essential services such as contract grant administration, program planning and development, human resources, insurance, fiscal procurement, and property management, required annual audits, record keeping, legal and other overhead services. In FY16, tribally grant support costs were fully funded for the first time in FY17. Congress increased this amount at the BIE's recommendation to $80 million. On behalf of the Ned Grant School, we thank you for such an increase. The increase we receive prevents us from redirecting ISET funds to cover essential administrative costs that our school has done in the past. Consistent full funding of tribal grant support costs is a primary necessity for tribes to continue to operate schools and for more tribes to decide to take on this responsibility. We are grateful for Congress' commitment to fully fund and willingness to work with tribal school boards and BIE to arrive at an amount that fulfills this obligation, particularly more schools convert from BIE operated to tribally controlled. The Indian School Equalization Program formula is the core budget account for educational and residential programs on the BIE elementary and secondary schools and dormitories. These funds are used for instructional programs at the BIE-funded schools and include salaries for teachers, educational assistants, and principals. I want to share the importance of these funds and highlight where these funds are used. Professional development. Funds allow us to provide professional development for our staff so they can be better equipped to provide teaching strategies and align with Common Core. Student support services, counseling, which are needed at our schools to address social needs of our students. College and career readiness are necessary to prepare our students to excel and be successful in higher education or prepare them for potential career opportunities. Language and culture. These programs are developed based on our schools' desire, our students' desire to learn our Navajo language and culture for self-identity and self-esteem. We can include you on the language immersion. The $6.5 million program increase for a total of $400 million that Congress provided in FY17 will be very helpful. However, it does not acknowledge the shortfalls that have been building for years. We respectfully request a total of $431 million for the critical budget category. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on these critical matters as we work to provide high-quality education for our students. We consider members of Congress to be partners in this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Next, Royd Lee. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To start off, I would like to introduce myself in my Navajo language. Royd Lee, I change the college in Bashichin, look at the shade to bind the Chanel. Shan't toilet Nasha, Ado did Ultratinishi, Aja Tatasata. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Royd Lee, and I am the current president of Native American Grant School Association, also known as NAGSA. I would like to take this time to write this testimony on behalf of our schools that work with Native American children from both the Navajo Nation and Hopi tribe within 2 states of Arizona and New Mexico. I'm an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation. I'm only 26 years old. I come from a small community in northeast Arizona from a place called Shanto. I'm a product of Shanto boarding school before it converted into Shanto Preparatory School, a 100-97 school. I'm currently serving as an elected school board member for Shanto Preparatory School. At age 26, I've seen the issues, and I feel for our Native American children, that many still live in the third world conditions. I grew up with no running water, lack of electricity, and unpaved bus routes. And yet, to this day, there is no excuse why our children live in these same conditions. Becoming the key objectives of NAGSA testifying before you today is advocate for our schools. Each of our schools face independent of challenges. Overall, our schools still lack the resources to ensure that our students receive the best educational needs. Our school truly depends on funding for our school. Without the education community, it will vanish. Currently, NAGSA represents 16 schools with 2 residential halls, a second home for our Native American students. A total of 7 schools on the Hopi side and 9 schools on the Navajo side. Today, I'm here to represent both tribes. I'm here to speak for those who can't speak for themselves, primarily our students. because it's an ethical duty that I did to take the oath of office. Our students have the obligation to reach their potential, but yet, with President Donald Trump's proposed plans and budget cuts, I positively protest in a positive manner that our funding should adequately stay the same. 1% can make a drastic difference. Our resources can deplenish. I'm here for those because our students deserve this equal education as those in the multicultural areas. And so with that, with all of the promises and the credentials that our students need, it is crucial that we stand together as Native American community, that the budget cuts isn't for us, and it will never be for us, because the EPA needs to do a vital role. We have 2 schools on the Hopi Reservation that have high-level arsenic, and that needs to be looked into. With any budget cuts, everything that we look forward to is diminishing. We all share a common interest, and the common issue is that we have teacher shortage. The teacher shortage is that we have lack of housing. We need funding to increase better housing. The Navajo Nation is nearly the size of West Virginia, but yet we only have 13 grocery stores. And so that is hard to recruit and retain our teachers. NAGSA is working hard with our member schools. As the president, I visit schools. I have attended school board meetings. I've looked at the conditions. I took the time and effort to make sure that our students are there for whatever purposes it is to receive the best education. On behalf of that, I am also an educator. I teach the Navajo language. I'm a Navajo language teacher. So with all these adequate resources, the ESSA needs to be left alone, because at the federal level, we mandate so many requirements that it takes the time away from our school administrators to actually ensure that our students are ready for the Common Core and all endeavors that are played at the state and tribal level. Again, thank you very much that we keep everything the same it is, and I thank you, congressional leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your testimony. Obviously, education is extremely important. I can't think of anything more important than education throughout Indian country, throughout the country, and we have our challenges, and we're trying to face those challenges over the last number of years to try to increase funding for education in general, and obviously the school construction. And as I mentioned to the previous panel, we're attempting to find a way to resolve this problem once and for all and get on with it. We have an obligation to do this, and we all agree that that's an obligation we need to meet. I appreciate your offer for a language immersion program. I may take you up on it. Some people think I can't speak English very well, so this probably would help me out. And as far as the budgets are concerned, I've been through Republican presidents and Democratic presidents, and we agree to disagree on occasion. And those budgets will be proposed, and the Congress will, as the Constitution outlines, will put together the budget and the appropriation bills and hopefully pass them in regular order, as we all should do. And with that, Ms. McCollum.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony, and I think it's we've heard a very solid, united front from across Indian country, and I think we'll hear from the Plain States and a couple more of the Great Lakes states tribes today with some of the same issues. I thank you for that, and thank you at 26 for standing up and running for school board, because sometimes students don't think the people serving on school boards really know what it's like to go to school, and I think you speak with fresh experience of the struggle that especially students in Indian country face when trying to focus in on their studies. So thank you very much, Mr. Lee, for your testimony.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Pingree. Great.
Thank you for your testimony.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your testimony. We appreciate your being here today. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We welcome the panelists. Thank you for being here, and we appreciate your time, and we want you to know that we're here to listen to you, and that your time here is well spent, and it can make a difference. So I'm Congressman Stewart, substituting for the chair today, and I believe Tom Miller from the Association of Community Tribal Schools. Mr. Miller, we'll start with you, and you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. I am the president of the Association of Community Tribal Schools, and we are an organization that's been around since 1982. In the schools, we represent a significant number of the 130 schools and the 30,000 students that are in the BIE-funded system. There are approximately 21 states that have schools in them, and Minnesota's one. Michigan, my area where I'm from, is the Great Lakes area. I'm a member of my home tribe, which is the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, and these schools are operated directly by tribal governing bodies or tribal organizations, and they're usually they have to be authorized by a tribal governing body. So we have something that we've done for years that is now coming as schools of choice. Our schools, which started with the original tribally controlled school, which was Rough Rock Demonstration School in 1966, we always say we're the original schools of choice, and we continue to be so nowadays. I'd like to thank the Congress for the modest increase that we saw on appropriations. We'd like to see more, of course. And I think one of the last panel members highlighted something that happened. We had tribal grant support costs funded at 100% for the first time in 50 years. So that's kind of a significant thing for us. Appropriations, of course, have been at, we feel, a modest level, but we'd like to thank you for doing that. We feel that our increases in our 5 major element areas, which are ISEP, facility operations, facility maintenance, student transportation, tribal grant support costs, probably are at a need of about $60 to $70 million a year. We're getting $13 million in those areas this year. So you can see when I say thank you for the increase, but a larger increase would be very well appreciated. There's all the area of facility operation and maintenance, which I get into. My area that I'm really on is the facilities. And we'd like to see that a possibility of the $125 million for facility operation and maintenance be forward funded, kind of take us out of the political ping pong game that we're kind of involved with right now, and allow the schools to at least plan and have secure funding for that 1 year, because the facilities are so important. Early childhood and family development, one of our key areas, funded, but boy, it could be funded a lot better. $3 million could be 4, 5, 6. It's one of our top priority programs to enable our tribes to have more success when the children get to the K through 12 systems. Facilities. The deterioration rate right now for the facilities that are in the BIE-funded system is $75 million a year. Yet we don't even get funding to replace it. We're in a declining, spiraling downward movement on it, and we really need to have Congress look at adequately funding and developing a plan by which the schools would be able to be replaced in a timely manner, so the facilities and the cycle of life of a school, which is 40 years, would mean something. If we go at the present rate right now, and I'm not exaggerating this, it'll be 120 years before the last school on the list is done. I don't plan on being around that long. This actually is mind-boggling when you look at the need and then the actual appropriations which are in place. ACTS is working on the fact that we could develop a plan with help from all the associations that are here to, for a timely replacement of the schools and get the kids into quality educational facilities that'll help us better educate them. The things like infrastructure, we've got school construction, the staff housing. One of the things that the schools have that most of the schools around the nation don't have to worry about, teacher recruitment, teacher retention, and I see a red light, that we need a housing factor to help get quality teachers there and to keep them there. That is something else that has not been funded adequately. The last thing I've got is we're looking at trying to get a study done where the tribes state how many want new school starts, which we've had a legislative moratorium on, which we'd like to see lifted. Numbers of tribes want to expand grades, which have been blocked for the last 20 years. And then there's also the aspect with the BIE taking all the hits it takes on bad management and whatever. There might be a need for a separate agency to be formed, similar to IAIA, and maybe let us try to manage the thing through that. And those are ideas that are out there. With that, I thank you for the time, and I could go on for a few hours, but.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Miller. We appreciate, again, your testimony. I'd like to follow up on just one thing. You had 13 million this year. What was it in previous years? You said it was up a little bit.
Well, my expert is gone. It's always been just a modest increase. It has never been near the need. Need and actual, they're light years apart. So
You're saying 60 to 70 is the need, and maybe 125 for some of the facilities, infrastructures?
Yeah. Well, here's what, if you did the infrastructure stuff and you wanted to get rid of the backlog, which deteriorates faster than replacement, you'd probably need $1 billion.
Yeah.
So we're talking, it is a significant sting for the appropriations if you're going to actually do something significant and actually lessen or get rid of the problem.
Well, we appreciate the frustration sometimes when the numbers are unknown year to year. It makes it very difficult, as you said, for future planning. Ms. McCullum?
I'll wait until.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Lender Russ McDonald then, who is the United Tribes, representing United Tribes Technical College. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Russ McDonald, President of the United Tribes Technical College located in Bismarck, North Dakota. I'm an enrolled member of the Spirit Lake Dakota Nation and a proud descendant of the Sanas and Hidatsa Nations, all located in North Dakota. Thank you for holding this hearing to hear knowledge from tribes and tribal organizations regarding fiscal year 2018 funding for Indian programs under your jurisdiction. There are very few public witness appropriation hearings this year, and we're very appreciative of that you are devoting 2 entire days to listening to us. United Tribes Technical College has been in the education and training business for 48 years. 40 of these years were operated under an Indian Self-Determination Act agreement. We are governed by a 10-member board of directors composed of the chairman and 1 delegate from each of the 5 tribes located in North Dakota. We're a residential college offering technical and academic education with support services to enhance the success of the individuals and families we serve. Our Indian student body comes from all over the nation, but primarily from the Great Plains. Over 70% of our students receive Pell Grants. Our written submitted testimony details our course offerings and data regarding our services and our student outcomes. Before summarizing our recommendations, we want to thank you specifically for two specific things. Number one, for the $500,000 fiscal year 2017 increase in the Bureau of Indian Education budget for tribal technical colleges. This funding is shared with Navajo Technical University. And number two, for putting tribal technical colleges on a forward-funded basis as of fiscal year 2016. Forward funding has made a positive impact, especially in years like this one when federal agency funding is uncertain due to long-term continuing resolution. In summary, we request $11 million for the Bureau of Indian Education line item, tribal technical colleges, which would be a $3.1 million increase over the fiscal year 2017 enacted level. Given the great need in Indian country and elsewhere for a better prepared and trained workforce, this is a good investment. Continuation of full funding for contract support costs and placement of this funding on a permanent mandatory basis. As a self-determination contractor, we are directly affected by this provision. continuation of full funding for tribal grant support costs for tribally operated elementary and secondary schools. We have a Bureau of Indian Education funded pre-K through 7th grade school on our campus, the Theodore Jameson Elementary School, for whom this is very important. Many of the children of our United Tribes Technical College students and staff attend this school. We like the idea of parents and their children attending school on the same campus. Lastly, Northern Plains Tribal Law Enforcement Academy. We continue to feel strongly that there should be a tribal law enforcement academy in the Northern Plains. Establishment of such academy is supported by the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association, the extensive and unique body of Indian law, including expanded tribal authorities under the Tribal Law and Order Act, the Violence Against Women Act, and requirements of the Indian Child Protection Statutes, all call out for tribally directed training. We also have growing issues with drug addiction, human trafficking, and crimes related to addiction. We understand that state and national training resources would have an important role in this new endeavor. Basic law enforcement training is currently provided through the Bureau of Indian Administration's Police Academy in Artesia, New Mexico, with the BIA using state academies to supplement what it provides. That is something we could develop and provide as a tribal college located on the northern tier of the United States. United Tribes Technical College already has a criminal justice program offering 2- and 4-year degrees. We want to expand our program to better help meet law enforcement needs in Indian country. Given our criminal justice program, our location, and our campus resources, we propose the establishment of a Northern Plains Indian Law Enforcement Academy and ask that you support such an endeavor. Thank you for your consideration of our recommendations.
Thank you, President McDonald. And now President Wilson. Ryan Wilson is President of National Alliance to Save Native Languages.
Thank you, Congressman Stewart. I congratulate you for being appointed to this committee, too. And we always need new allies coming in, so I'm glad you're here with us. Just so I, being honest, got jealous of the Navajos. Talking to Danae here, so we'll share a little bit. How matakiape, chante washte nape chuzapalo. Tatanka washaka imachiapalo. Oyate chile wamayankapo. Hokshina yan wiyanke. Chonkata hanajialo lakho wichonkake tewahilana. Blehe mechelo. Just saying that little bit, and we'll on another day translate for you and so forth. But it's all good words, you know. Yeah. So,
We're trusting you, yeah.
Thank you. So I will just jump right into it. That we want to thank the committee for the FY17 report language, where they allocated $2 million for immersion projects in these schools, and that came out of program enhancement. What our request here is today on behalf of the National Alliance is that we double that for this 18 fiscal year, and we take the position that the urgent need and the crisis in language loss is so profound that it has to be done now. And we also thank the committee in FY15. They had report language that really substantiated and documented for the first time in the history of this committee that they support immersion in these BIE schools. And then in FY16, they expanded the report language to include what Tom Miller was talking about, expansion of BIE. There's been a moratorium on any expansion, but in that report language, you guys allowed expansion to occur if it was immersion school related to grandfather and community-based immersion schools and things of that nature. So we're moving in the right direction, and I thank you guys for that. It means a lot. And many years ago, not to give up our age or so forth, but Congresswoman McCollum and I, when I was at NIA and others, we worked very hard on the Esther Martinez Native Language Bill, which is an HHS. At that time, people kind of thought we were crazy talking about immersion schools, and native languages as the medium of instruction. Yet the people in the Beltway here are all familiar with immersion. They send their children to French immersion and Spanish immersion and Chinese languages and so forth. And so it was kind of a really introducing a new concept. And I'm scared to be sitting so close next to my brother-in-law. We're not supposed to sit by each other like this. Might be lightning hitting here or something, but he's a leader in the tribal college movement. And back in the 70s, my mom worked very hard for passage of the Tribal College Act. At the time, they thought Indian country was crazy, thinking that they could handle tribal colleges. And these colleges were all being run out of portables and trailers and in the middle of nowhere, having the vision and being progressive, not liberal, just progressive in our thought. And it's a sacred progression of next logical steps. So this committee could take a big step in emboldening this budget specifically for the immersion. I would also ask you to pay high attention to detail in the report language, because some of the same leadership in the Bureau was the same leadership that created this fattened bureaucracy that we see now with the middle management. They've been recycled from the Bush administration, back 10 years ago. And you need to be cognizant of that I think we need to hire specifics in directing funding and so forth. So I, wanted to share that little bit. There's always questions on who supports this. And as I indicated in the written testimony, this is supported by the National Congress of American Indians. This is supported by the National Indian Education Association, for which I was a board member for 15 years and a former president. It's supported by the Rocky Mountain Tribal Leaders Council. It's supported by Tribal Interior Budget Council, who had 2 resolutions covering 3 different fiscal years to do this. It was supported by Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association. So tribes themselves have made, I think, a cognizant decision that they're going to have to give up something somewhere to assure that immersion exists in this BIE system. In my written testimony, I explain the authority and what authority you have as a committee as well under statutes, to do this, which is really broad-based. And it also explains other justifications in here. In previous years, I've introduced probably a stack this tall of research, scientifically research-based things that show these are best practices in Indian country as well. So I will conclude by thanking you. As my brother-in-law said, it's not lost on us that you guys give up 2 days of your time. To us, we know that's like a year of your time. And I hope you continue to honor the tradition of this hearing and keep doing that. And it's good to see you guys again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And I can pretty much assure you, I think, speaking for the chairman, that we will certainly continue with these 2 days. They're very valuable to us. So thank you. Victoria Ketchian, who is with the Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska. Did I say your last name close?
Close, Kichiyan.
Kichiyan.
No Yan.
Okay, thank you. I turn time over to you for 5 minutes then.
Thank you, Congressman Stewart. Good morning, Congressman Stewart and members of the committee. My name is Victoria Kichiyan, and I'm from Winnebago, Nebraska, and I serve as the Tribal Council Treasurer. And I'd like to thank you, this committee, Congressman Fortenberry, his staff, and all those that have been with us on this ongoing crisis in the Great Plains. And as you know, Winnebago has the only federally operated health facility to ever lose its CMS certification. So for 2 years now, we have not been able to collect third-party revenue that our facility heavily relies on. As you know, IHS is underfunded, and this third-party revenue has been tragic, and the loss of services and support from that revenue has been detrimental to our tribe, our people, and all those that facility serves. Collectively, it serves about 10,000 people, so it's just not the Winnebago and Omaha who are suffering, it's the tri-state area who count on that facility. Mr. Chairman, as you know, the certification has been lost for 2 years, and I wish I could come here and tell you that we're close to regaining that certification. The tribe learned that May 1 we would submit a application, and then pending the CMS review in Pine Ridge and Rosebud, they decided to push that back. And for all logical reasons, that seems like a good move to do another internal review, have the governing body look at this application. But I just come here yet again with no good news. We're not certified, we're pushing it back further. And frankly, I'm tired of coming here telling you the same thing over and over again. And you've been a great partner to the tribe, yet we need to support that effort so that we can make some real sustainable changes. While IHS is telling the congressional delegation that improvements have been made, the progress and the concerns of my council have grown greater. We have 51 vacancies at our service unit out of 202. That's a little over 25%. And without the funding and the personnel to correct this corrective action plan and see it through, our service unit continues to suffer. Additionally, we're up to $4 million in lost revenue from this CMS decertification. And every day that we don't have that certification, we're losing and burning through the carryover dollars. So it's unreasonable to think that we can deal with this crisis with a net loss of $4 million, a 25% vacancy rate, and it's just not set up for success or for adequate health care. This is not to say that there have not been some improvements. Last fall, we got a new CEO. We had been acting for like 7 years, and just a cycle of administrators coming through with no continuity of healthcare nor administration. And so, although our CEO genuinely believes in his work and works very hard and works well with the council, this gentleman does not control the funding of the service unit, and we found great difficulty in just in his tenure on making these improvements. And just several days ago, when I'm telling you that I have great news to report, that we have a CEO, I learned just yesterday that this CEO is going to be leaving our facility for family reasons. And it's like another tragedy. It's like somebody passed away. I mean, that's how critical our service unit is and how this is not good. So I'm sorry getting caught up in that. So it's the lack of funding, the lack of personnel, that we are not going to be able to continue on under these circumstances. For all these reasons, we're requesting assistance in obtaining a clearly direct identified portion of that additional funding that was just allocated for recertification issues. But without an administrator, all the funding in the world is not going to solve our problems. So you can understand we're at a critical junction in our recertification process. And not only that, this gentleman who, like I said, is highly respected by the council and has been a great resource, has to jump through hoops to get these critical positions identified as prerequisites to the recertification process filled. He goes to area, and area finance department says, this isn't in your budget, you can't fill this position. What do you mean? We need this dietitian, we need this AO. You know, it has to happen, but it's without this funding and it not in the budget, we're not making any progress. Additionally, the hiring freeze, although, you know, we're hearing that it's lifted, it's no issue, in the Great Plains, it's still an issue. We know that the area office can submit for exemptions, and I know that 19 exemptions were applied for, but as I said, we have 51 vacancies, and that 19 exemptions are probably across the Great Plains and not for Winnebago. So when we ask for funding, we ask for continued support, it's to fill those vacancies, to get out of jeopardy, to save lives, and it's just an urgent need. So this ongoing certification, no later than October 1. If we don't certify by October 1, we are not going to be able to continue to operate at the already unacceptably low level, and then we don't collect anything. It's unreasonable. So we know that this committee has never failed to pass its budget out of full committee, and we appreciate that. But it's our colleagues, or your colleagues at Congress, that will kindly have to fund these needs, or we're just not going to come out of this rut. And it's hard to plan under a continuing resolution, and you can imagine more than one continuing resolution. So it's really difficult to do this. So I'm here, I'm worried, and I'm just asking for your support. Rumors of future cuts in IHS and HHS, and it's those make difficult recruitment difficult to say if the job's even going to be available. And so we just ask for your continued support from this subcommittee, and we know that you've always worked hard to fund these programs, so I just thank you for your time and your full consideration in helping Winnebago out.
Great. Thank you. To all of the panel, thank you again for being here, bringing these important issues to our attention. We sense your stress and concern, and it's apparent why that would be the case. I have a few follow-up questions I'll do very quickly, but before I do, I'll yield the time to Ms. McCollum, the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think a theme that we weren't hearing as articulately put until you kind of put it, Mr. Miller, is your very rural areas and rural schools, whether tribal nation schools or rural hospitals, are all facing a lot of challenges with housing, internet connection, pay, for teachers, law enforcement, for everything. It's very, very difficult. And then you add the continuing resolutions and some of the challenges like your hospital and that are facing, and people are like, okay, so do I want to take a job at someplace that's not accredited, is just creating a snowball effect, which is just making the situation all the more, at times feeling hopelessness. But we want to work with you to turn that around. So we can't turn it around if we don't look at the problem face on. So I don't know if you were here earlier when the chairman and I are going to be talking to our counterparts, whether it's Homeland, Housing, and that, and the other appropriation committees, saying we want you to do your due diligence as to cuts and programming that you're doing in accounts that directly have impact on a Native American accounts, because we could do everything we want in Interior, but if we're not looking at what's happening in the Justice Department, and we're very fortunate with Chairman Cole being on this committee because he's watching what's going on in Labor, Health, and Human Services, but we need to have that happen with appropriations across the board. I wanted to ask, there's been a movement to work on year-round Pell Grants. Could you maybe talk about how year-round Pell Grants, Mr. McDonald, would be helpful for your students? And then I have another question for you as well, too. With you talk about your law enforcement training. Is there a work within the state of North Dakota with some of their law enforcement schools to share? I mean, some of it gets right down to shooting ranges and some infrastructure that's very expensive to build into law enforcement training. So as you see yourself rolling this out, are you located in a situation with maybe where if the state school system for higher ed would be willing to be cooperative, would they be doing that? And where are the trade schools? Being from Minnesota, I'm not in the plains, but I'm right next to it. I know the pressure for welders coming in from all around the country, and trade schools working with your technical school. So if you could maybe just give me a little more background on what's going on.
Well, thanks for the question. First of all, the Pell Grants, the year-round Pell Grants are just going to be phenomenal help to those students trying to complete their education. And I think what we're seeing out there, and in regard to our students, is that they're excited about it. And visiting with some of them is that because they want to go to school year-round, they want to complete, and they want to get out there and get to work. So we're seeing that. And as the United Tribes Technical College, our roots are in the trade area. In fact, our highest, where we have a waiting list, our highest programs of interest there are welding and heavy equipment operating. And these are good salary, good career type jobs that are still needed within the state of North Dakota, especially because the oil boom is still going on. In regard to the other question, in regard to the police academy, is that there's resources within the Bismarck area. There's a highway patrol training facility there. There's Bismarck State College is located right up on a hill from us. University of Mary is located on the other side of the hill from us, and both of them have resources in regard to these areas. The other part is that we're not part of the North Dakota University system, but we collaborate often with the North Dakota University system. So we work not only United Tribes Technical College, but the North Dakota Association of Tribal Colleges, which there's five tribal colleges in North Dakota, and we all work closely in regard to course transfer and to help our students. If we don't have a program of study, maybe they get their generals done with us or vice versa. They either come to our college or we come to their college, so we become feeder programs for one another to help get our students out the door and get them out there working.
So you're looking at doing a 4-year law enforcement or a 2-year law enforcement, because a lot of law enforcement have moved to the 4-year degree within doing the post. So I want to work to have law enforcement as you're describing it, tribally run, tribal leaders and that. But if you're going to be competing so that they're not, I mean, you train them in as other people have talked about earlier in the panel, and then they get scooped off. I'll use an example. North St. Paul, when I was on the city council, right the first year out of the academy, we would be able to hire the bigger cities were looking to see who looked like they were the cream of the crop, right? And then after we had invested the first year of full police training, Minneapolis and St. Paul would come knocking on at the door. So are you looking at doing the full 4-year, and then we're going to have to look at what we do then for paying law enforcement so that we don't start that cycle of you making all the investments, we making all the investments, and then other people coming and taking the treasure?
Well, good points. For us, we already offer a 2-year and 4-year. And what we're seeking to do is enhance that activity by providing the extra training that's provided at Artesia already and duplicating that work up in the Northern Plains. And so, but you're absolutely right in regard to faculty and some of the other issues, and this committee really recognizing what's happening in rural America. So this is not just an Indian country issue. This is a rural issue. And so we see a lot of our teachers, our faculty, our police officers, EMS being pulled into the city because of better paying jobs. And the other issues that were mentioned already is the lack of housing within our areas, the lack of transportation. Those things are just non-existent. And then you get then we're looking at a younger workforce, and so there's not a whole lot of relationship if they're looking to get married or something or build a family. Then so there's not a whole lot of single folks available out there either, especially in North Dakota with our aging population. So, so there's things along those lines that I think are really recruitment efforts, retention efforts that would help us in regard to all these areas, all these professions that are not there right now. And it's really a rural issue.
Thank you, ma'am. So one very quick comment and then a question for you, Victoria, if I could. But Mr. Wilson, it's just interesting to me that we have an immersion program for some of these native languages. I had no idea that they were, on the precipice of losing those types of skills, and then that type of thing was necessary. And we want to help you on that. Can you tell me what will it take to recertify? What's the key to that?
So 2 years ago, when the hospital lost its certification, the service unit engaged in a further, an oversight of some sort, and they came up with a corrective action plan. And so they've been working on that corrective action plan to move the hospital into good standing and ready for to apply. And so we've had several internal reviews. We've had Joint Commission come and different to ensure that we're ready. Well, Pine Ridge and Rosebud didn't do well, so now IHS is scared that Winnebago's not going to do well either. And so it's this filling these vacancies and filling these positions so that we're even at the bare bones standard of what healthcare should be.
Well, and it seems like that's a self-fulfilling event because you lose the certification and now people are hesitant to come. You lose a certain part of your revenue. And it becomes, again, a kind of a death spiral of makes it much, much more difficult to recertify that's necessary.
It's been a direct impact on patient care, and you're right, and the reputation of the place, so it's hard to recruit, it's hard to get people to go there. I mean, it's just a multi-layered crisis.
Have you been able to meet your payroll in a sense with this reduction in revenue? Is there any stress at all with meeting the current payroll that people?
They are able to meet the payroll, but it's the current staff is, although they work hard, it is not adequate to man the ship. Okay. And those 51 vacancies are a direct deficiency to the healthcare that's provided.
Yeah. Well, and that makes it hard on the people that are working hard there when they're covering for 25%, a deficit in personnel, and makes it much more difficult for them. All right, well, thank you. Again, Ms. McCollum, you're complete, you're good? Yeah. Okay, yeah, all right. So in that case, this concludes the morning's hearing on American Indian and Native Alaskan programs. I want you to know, as I said, we will honor the trust responsibility that all members of Congress have, not just those of us that are here participating with you today. Thank you once again for your time, and this hearing is adjourned, and the next hearing will begin at 1 o'clock.